Destination Medicine is a joint project of the regional training hubs. This podcast series brings you medical students' accounts of their experience in applying to study medicine. Welcome to Destination Medicine. I'm Peter Letts. Dan Kendall has had a great career in rural pharmacy. When he discovered that he could study medicine while staying in the regional city he loved, however, Dan's life took a fabulous turn. In this inspiring episode, the medical student describes his move to medicine and how he has balanced study with work and family in this extremely supportive community. But first, Dan Kendall describes to Nicole Goodman where and when his medical journey started.
I guess I'd considered medicine in the past, but it was never really a good time, or I felt like it was going to be too long, or I don't really want to leave Dubbo, so I always sort of put it to the side and just thought it wasn't a possibility. So it wasn't until 2 years ago, a friend of mine at work been pestering me to maybe do medicine, but I'd already considered it before, so I hadn't really given it much thought until she mentioned that there was a university actually here in Dubbo that now supports the postgrad students. I decided to look into it that afternoon and realised it was only 4 years, which isn't that much really. So yeah, that's when I actually realistically considered it. So I guess that's where the actual initiation of realising it's possible to do it in the country in particular.
And why go from being a pharmacist to becoming a doctor?
Yeah, get that question a lot. Being a pharmacist is a great job, and I tell all my interns it's still a great job, great career. You know, you can really help people. I very much enjoy my job as it is. But I have found I've worked in the hospital for about 5 years in a variety of different settings. It's just all very interesting to me. I really enjoy, the diagnostics and sort of the management, not just drug management, because obviously that's what I do. So I just really enjoyed being, around that and being more interested in like the physiology and the disease and the people that, I wanted to do a bit more. And I'm not saying I'm a master of pharmacy, but it does eventually get to the point where you're starting to learn sort of very subspecialty information. And I'm very much a lifelong learner. So I wanted a job where it's just impossible to know everything. And medicine is very much fits that brief.
Right.
It's much more challenging too, which I enjoy. I enjoy a very challenging but rewarding job. So I just felt like it was a natural progression for me.
As you took on the challenge, was there a mentor or anyone that helped guide you around this new career path before you were accepted into medicine?
I wouldn't say so. You can learn something from everyone, and that's always sort of been a motto of mine, is that it doesn't really matter who it is. You can learn something from everyone. So there's definitely doctors, and not just doctors, and nurses and pharmacists who I respect a lot. And there's things that people do that you realise is, that's a good way to phrase that. That's a good way. It's a good mentality. That's something that I'm going to incorporate into my own professionalism. But in general, I wouldn't say I have one or two people that I look up to who I think, I want to be just like them. But I think it's maybe because I'm a bit older, maybe that's got something to do with it. But while I didn't have a singular mentor, there was a pharmacist I used to work with. And we didn't have to deliver something to a patient, but it certainly wasn't something we should be doing. And I asked him, I was like, well, why are we doing this? Should have ordered it ages ago or something like that. But he said, I just think if it was my mum out there in the community and there was no one to help me or look after me, I like to think that someone somewhere would help her out at the very least. And yeah, I still think about that and definitely practice that. It's not just about your role or your job. It's more about taking care of people in the community, especially when there's someone who can't do that for them. And, I think about my mother one day. What if there's no one looking after her and she's away from where I am? I hope that there would be, someone who would take that little extra time to help her out.
When you decided to apply for medicine, what were your first steps? Did you map out a plan at all?
Yeah, I had to get authority from a higher power. This is my wife.
Of course, good.
And it's a lifelong journey and it's hard and it affects my family. So I have a wife and 2 kids. So it's not really the degree, it's also after the degree. So I learned as much as I could from people I knew who'd studied at UCID, as well as people who were going through their doctor's internship and registrar, and then, even from consultants. So trying to get a big picture of like what's going to be involved and the impact it would have, not going to earn much money if I go to university. Night shifts is when you're working as an intern, and the effect that may have on raising children in particular. So that was a really important conversation. But you can make it work. So I'd say that was the very first step. It's big, broad planning, and then the other part is getting into GAMSAT for postgrad is a must. So studying for that, sitting that, and then anxiously waiting for the results. And then I was quite fortunate that went quite well. And then you go through the enrollment process with USED. I think unlike most other people, I only applied for one very specific university because I can realistically only do it in Dubbo. I put all my eggs in one basket. So I think most people would apply through GEMSAS as well for a variety of other universities. But for me, GAMSAT, USED application. With the program here in Dubbo, you also have to provide a written statement, a genuine desire to practice in the country in particular.
Yes.
The funding for the university in part comes from the Murray-Darling project, I think it's called, to increase the number of rural doctors. The best way to do that is to train rural people in a rural area. So there's a written statement reinforcing a genuine desire for that. So with those things, you wait a long time and then you get an interview and it's sort of backing up that written statement, I guess is the easiest way to explain. And then offers come out. So that's about a year and a half process.
Did you tell anyone else besides your wife about your goal of becoming a doctor, and what was their reaction?
Yeah, I did. I work with a lot of doctors and nurses and pharmacists. Initially, before I got my GAMSAT results, I didn't tell too many people because your self-esteem gets tied up a bit in that. So, yeah, good reactions. A lot of people were excited, which is good. A lot of, you can be my rural GP, like when you graduate. My wife wasn't surprised at all, which is a good sign, I take it. She sort of saw that coming. People get quite excited, which is good. It's a nice reaction,
Absolutely. It's a huge undertaking, and obviously you've got the chops to do it. It's a huge encouragement for you. What comes to mind when you think about the application process? You mentioned earlier the interview and so on. How did you prepare for the interview?
Fortunately, there's a lot of information online about medical school interviews, as well as question banks and what you might be expected to answer. And there's plenty of information online. I did definitely practice a lot. Sometimes it's quite hard to explain why you want to do medicine because it's so hard and it's a large opportunity cost for me in particular. It can be really hard to actually get across why you want to do it, which is a weird thing to say, but it's especially a unique reason. Everyone wants to help people. Makes you feel better, makes the community better, but it's sort of hard to tease out the specific reasons why you yourself want to do it. So it's a lot of really reflecting on that, I found, so I could give a genuine response. That's the sort of interview practice that I did. But in reality, the interview I did was all about just being genuine. They really wanted to know a genuine answer. Why do you want to be in a rural area? Why do you want to practice in a rural area? Do you want to be in a rural area when you finish practicing? Do you? And why do you want to do that? One of the big questions they asked me was about the study load, which is still a good question. So there's a lot of things that I have to balance because I have a wife and children and a job and a mortgage. So I have a lot of responsibilities, and it's something I've definitely had to consider about how am I going to balance all those things, spending time with children, having fun, living a good life and making sure there's food on everyone's plate while still trying to succeed at uni. Everything you learn in medicine at university is pretty much useful. At some point, you're going to need to know. It's not something I wanted to fall behind on.
What would you suggest to anyone considering medicine to take on board? What would your advice be?
It's hard. And if you've done another degree, you're expected to know a lot more. The expectations are much higher. You're in a very privileged position to be in part of any university studying medicine. It's so hard to get in. So if you do get in, you have to recognise the privilege you have to study medicine and eventually to be able to practice medicine. So I think you need to take it quite seriously. I mean, there's always room for a bit of fun, but you need to be quite conscious of that and really put in the effort and try your hardest. It's also quite a long process to get in. The turnaround times take a while. You're thinking a lot about what's going to happen and, when I get that score back, is everything going to change? One thing I wish I did know was they do have HEDI scholarships for the GAMSAT. So HEDI is a group that sort of supports New South Wales training in health. They also have scholarships when you do start medical school. And another recommendation I would have is talk to someone who's sat the GAMSAT, like myself. Lots of people have done it, and there are people who've done it many times. It's hard. It's a hard exam, and it's supposed to be hard. It's a rapid-fire exam, and it's intentionally meant to test your resilience and your stamina. My one went for 7 hours or something like that. It's not very fun, but it's really hard to get your head around. What do you need to know? How do you study for something like this? That's something that helped me a lot, was finding people who had sat this exam quite a bit.
What about for prospective students considering rural placement? What are your tips or advice for them?
I am biased because I am from Dubbo, but there's a few things that are quite special about being in rural areas. Generally, there's more scholarships, cheaper cost of living, housing is cheaper, travel is cheaper and shorter. More importantly, there's a lot of support, particularly in rural areas, because of the shortage of doctors, essentially. Or practitioners, I should say. It's not just doctors. And I think another benefit is actually the sort of the rural hospital. It's different to how a metro hospital functions. So rural hospitals, it's much more general. So there's less super subspecialties. Patients that present to Dubbo are just as sick, if not sicker, than people who go to Sydney, believe it or not. Patients present a lot later in the disease process. Dubbo in particular has a very large draw. So we have many towns, very large radius that come to our hospital, and all sorts of presentations that you would see in a metro area. So I think people may wonder if they're missing out by going to a rural area as opposed to a metropolitan hospital. Doctors I've talked to, that's not the case. You'll see the same disease presentations, if not worse sometimes. And from what I've heard from other medical students, it's a really good place to learn in Dubbo in particular. And these are students who have been from Sydney and then come for a rural placement, because you just get given more broad work.
So more opportunities than you might say in the metro hospitals.
Yeah, more opportunities.
What is it about medicine, do you think, that you could never have prepared for?
I think I'm quite fortunate in that, coming from a clinical hospital and community background, I kind of have been exposed to the good, the bad and the ugly of what medicine entails. I know that it's stressful. There's long, hard-working conditions. There's a huge amount of responsibility. In fact, a friend of mine who's a doctor at the hospital was one of the few people who recommend not to do it.
Oh, no.
More in the sense of he's just being a bit broad. He's taken that statement back since, but more in that you really should think about where you want to go and recognise that it's very difficult. If you're not got that advantage of knowing or particularly seeing how stressed some of these people can get, I think that would be really difficult to find out for the first time. I can't imagine being a junior doctor and just realising how hard it is after you've put in all that work. As far as the actual medical degree, there's so much content. I'm not that far in, but there's a lot of content. I'm not someone who particularly gets overwhelmed, but I do find myself at the start of every week, which is sort of like a new pathology, getting overwhelmed, particularly at the start of a block, say cardiovascular. And it takes time to learn and revise and get your head around the topics. I don't find until at the very end of the block, which is 4 weeks, that I actually understand and feel confident and actually feel good. And then 2 days later, you start the next block. So it's just kind of this wave of being overwhelmed with the amount of information. But I think the best thing you do is you talk to other students. It's a shared experience. I'm not the only one that feels this way. And I think another thing that can happen, especially in medical school, is that everyone is brilliant. And so one thing I would recommend is not comparing yourself to other students. Everyone's just amazing. So there's really no point. You really need to focus on yourself and what you're capable of and how you're going.
So, Daniel, what's the plan from here? What's next for you?
Well, I have to get through medical school, so 4 years in total, and I'll do it all here in Dubbo. And after that, I'm hoping to do my internship at the Dubbo-based hospital. And as far as specialisations or generalisations, I'm hoping to do sort of the ACRM, which is rural generalism, sort of builds on my training that I already have as a pharmacist. And I'm hoping to get the Rural Doctors Network cadetship, which I'll apply for next year, which will help support that as well. But then again, always open to other things. Mostly I'm going to see different specialties and learn new things. So I'm kind of excited to see all of that. But for now, rural generalism is the thing for me, I think.
Medical student Daniel Kendall, who's studying at the University of Sydney School of Rural Health, based in Dubbo. This is Destination Medicine. Thanks for listening. Regional training hubs are supported by funding from the Australian Government under the Rural Health Multidisciplinary Training Program.